Hello everyone, Kirk here, and as you probably already know, we are taking the week off for the holidays, so instead of a new episode of Triple Click, we are bumping up one of our members-only bonus episodes from earlier in the year. Specifically, we're running our spoiler-filled conversation about HBO's adaptation of The Last of Us, which initially ran in March, shortly after the show's first season completed. Remember HBO? I remember HBO. Of course, if you like this bonus episode, also, if you like Triple Click, we hope that you'll consider becoming a member of Maximum Fun and supporting us and supporting Maximum Fun. You can do that at MaximumFun.org/join, as we say every episode. And if you do that, you'll get an episode like this every month. And also, if you do that, you'll get all the bonus episodes that we have recorded since we started making the show, now almost 4 years ago, which is crazy. So you'll get 44 bonus episodes counting this month's December's episode, which will be our long-awaited Beanscast on Baldur's Gate 3, which is very exciting. This year we talked about all kinds of things in the bonus feed. We debated the best October in video game history. We played a game of Debatable live in person at Jason's house. We recorded spoilery thoughts on games like Tears of the Kingdom, Persona 5, and Spider-Man 2, shows and movies like Succession, Her, Ex Machina, lots of good stuff. So go become a member, support our show, support sustainable creator-owned media that doesn't sell out and ruin itself at the first opportunity. Where was I? Go to MaximumFun.org/join to become a member. Thanks so much to all of our members for making this whole thing possible. Okay, that's enough from me. Thank you all for listening, and from all of us at Triple Click, we hope that you are having a happy holiday season, and we'll see you next week, and we'll each share our top 10 games of the year. But for now, let's talk about The Last of Us. Take it away, past hosts. I'm Kirk Hamilton.
I'm Maddie Myers.
And I'm Jason Schreier. Hello.
Hello. It's us again.
It is.
And thank you to everybody listening to this for supporting our show. We really appreciate you.
Yeah.
If you're hearing this when it went up, you're hearing this during Max Fun Drive. This is our bonus episode for Maximum Fun Drive. So it's even more special, even though you're probably listening to this after Max Fun Drive. And then, you're just a member.
And also, thank you to people who are other Max Fun members who are listening to the show because they're like, hey, The Last of Us on HBO sounds pretty cool. I want to hear people talk about that.
Yeah, hey, you could listen to some more Triple Click content. You could
It's true, you could.
You could even add us to one of the shows that you support on Maximum Fun if you enjoy this. Or not, whatever
or
you want to do.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No biggie. Up to you.
Not like the world will end. It's not like your decision.
It's not like you're the only person in the entire world who has the power to do this, and it's all up to you. And if anyone prevents you from that, it would be unethical.
Gosh, it is nice that we all live in a much lower stakes world than the world of The Last of Us, which is pretty nice.
For now.
Oh my God.
So
wow.
It's funny that, the book I just read, The Ministry for the Future, is so different from The Last of Us. There's a lot of things that are interestingly different from The Last of Us that we will talk about. But anyways, that's what we're going to be talking about on this bonus episode. We're going to be talking about the HBO adaptation of the PlayStation video game, The Last of Us. And this is a Beanscast, which means we'll be spilling the beans. We'll be doing it in a slightly controlled fashion. We're going to spill like a lot of the beans. Whoa, beans everywhere, but not all the beans from the jar. And those will be the beans of, I'm not going to use the beans metaphor. I'm just going to give a clear spoiler.
Okay, great.
We're going to do spoilers spoilers for the game, The Last of Us, and its expansion or DLC Left Behind, as well as the show, of course. Full spoilers for season 1 of the show, the first game. That's what we're going to talk about for a while. We may allude to things in The Last of Us Part 2, the video game, but we won't really get into it. And then at some point, we'll talk a little bit more about The Last of Us Part 2 and specifically what it may mean to be adapting that for multiple TV series or seasons, it sounds like. So we'll give a warning for that if you watch the show and maybe haven't played the game, haven't played the sequel, don't know what happens. That could be really cool. There's a lot of stuff that does happen in The Last of Us Part 2 that is like majorly spoilery. So we'll give you a warning before we get into any of those specifics. That'll be a little ways in. For now, though, we're going to talk about the show. So yeah, we all watched it. So did the rest of the world. We just live in the Last of Us world where now it's just like the biggest thing ever.
See, that's why I said for now, because we live in the Last of Us world.
That's true. I guess at some point we could actually live in the Last of Us world.
It's fine. Cordyceps hasn't even come close to evolving to become that. But anything else could lead to it. I just want to say, for a second, like to kind of break character slightly. It's so weird that just regular people in my life now debate what Joel does at the end of The Last of Us. I'm like, this is something that took over my brain, cordyceps style, in 2013. But that was just me. Like, I didn't have to have these conversations with people in my life who don't play and cover video games.
Right.
But now it's everywhere. Now, like, Dina's mom is like weighing in on what she thinks about what Joel did at the end of season 1.
It's been fun for me because it lets me talk some to people about video games in a way that I think is actually really interesting, because I can specifically talk about some of those climactic moments and how different they were in the game because they were interactive, and like explain to people like, okay, so you saw that story? That was like a really provocative, interesting, engaging story, right? And now imagine all these other layers on it, and like you can kind of get a sense for what I dedicate a lot of hours of my life to. And you know, I'm not just like playing Fortnite over here. Like there is a lot of interesting stuff going on. So that has actually been
Fortnite does some cool
sometimes
stuff,
we also just play Diablo 4.
Nothing wrong. Yes, there's nothing wrong with just clicking on things until they explode.
But no, you're right. And it was kind of fun to tell people like, oh, these are different aspects of the show that are in the game and what changes them. And I mean, we're about to get into it. Each episode, I couldn't turn my brain off as a viewer. I was like, oh, I remember playing this part, and oh, they changed that. It was such a weird experience watching this show and just immediately knowing what was and wasn't different.
I guess we're in the thick of it. We don't really have to do the thing where we go around. I mean, The Last of Us is so baked into the video game discourse DNA at this point that
I know.
It's like hard to tease that all out. I will say that I thought the show was generally really well done, more from an acting perspective than from a directing perspective. Like just looking at it, it looked fine a lot of the time. It looked like a video game adaptation. I don't mean that as a dig really, because video games look great. I mean, The Last of Us looks really nice, but it was more the performances I just thought were really strong. And I found the changes to be fascinating. And mostly I was so caught up in the feeling of experiencing this story, imagining all the people who were watching it, experiencing it too, and then trying to get my head around what it is about this story that is so compelling to so many people, to so many millions of people who watched it. And, you know, I came up with a lot of different answers. I mean, when you watch the show, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, I get why people watch this. This is really entertaining and like, you know, a really sort of provocative show in a lot of ways. But yeah, I really thought that it was surprisingly, maybe unsurprisingly, I thought it was very successful overall.
Yeah, I also thought it was fantastic. And I think it speaks to, it speaks to a few things, but I think first and foremost, it speaks to just the story quality of The Last of Us, which, I mean, for all of our kind of like love for games and the storytelling that they have, I mean, not a lot of like cinematic style games have really lived up to The Last of Us, even in the last 10 years when it comes to like being able to tell a nuanced, complicated, interesting, thought-provoking story. And I think video game storytelling is actually way better at other things, like the kind of mystery solving, deductive stuff, like interactive stuff, environmental storytelling, Elden Ring style story, like a lot of the stuff that we've talked about on our show. On
cooperative storytelling. The stories
exactly. Cooperative, systemic storytelling. Like, hey, man, you'll never believe what I just did in Breath of the Wild. That sort of stuff is what video games are generally good at. The Last of Us, it felt like, and I've seen this point floating around the internet, it felt like it was designed from the beginning to be a cinematic HBO style show.
Yeah, specifically an HBO
video game.
Exactly.
Drama.
So of course it works as an HBO drama. Still, putting that aside, I thought the show was phenomenal. I thought that like the performances were really, I mean, I think it's really a testament to the directors, both the casting directors and the directors, that they were able to get such incredible performances out of pretty much every character on the show. There isn't a single weak link.
I should say I had that thought when I was saying like about the directing, like it was like the camera stylistic work is the thing I was talking about, where actually it is correct. It is like the directors did a great job with the cast and getting a lot out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it works differently on every show, obviously. But that's like DP cinematography stuff is what you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, the show just really worked. It's just like, I mean, The Last of Us works. It just breaks up nicely as a show. Every single episode it's really true to the game. For people who haven't played the game, it is almost identical, other than like a few additions. And we could talk a little bit about what is kind of missing from the game in the show, which is an interesting topic. But the overall points points and really down to even the specific stories from the very beginning with Tess to the very end with David and then the hospital stuff. That's all straight out of the game. If you haven't played the game, you should know that there are approximately 10 times as many, hey, you see that ladder? Let me give you a boost to get up there type moments in the game. And the show, including a couple of those, is kind of like a fun, gimmicky, like wink at people who played the game and have played other Naughty Dog games, because that is very much a trope in those games. But yeah, I came away just incredibly impressed and was texting friends and family who don't play games and be like, hey, if you haven't, you should watch this show because it's really good.
Did you two watch it with your partners, who I assume both have also not played the game? Because
No. Emily was
not
on board.
because, my wife is in, unfortunately, I guess it's fitting for a Naughty Dog production. My wife has been in crunch mode with her job for the past few weeks.
Oh,
so
sure,
unfortunately,
yeah.
was not able to watch it.
Emily just doesn't like stuff that's like really like intensely emotional, and also just, kind of has a lot of tragedy and loss.
Yeah, Dina has such a stronger stomach than I do and watches so much violent true crime and non-true crime stuff that I can't stomach. So she was fine with every single aspect of this show in ways that I wasn't. So we watched all of it together, and her mother watched all of it, which I thought was fascinating because Dina plays games at this point and also actually saw me play a lot of The Last of Us Part 2 when I was reviewing it. That was 1,000 years ago, relatively early in our relationship in comparison, feels like another life. But she unfortunately was like spoiled on some of the show just from remembering things in part 2, which was kind of funny. But Dina's mom, I thought, had a really fascinating perspective on it as a normie, a non-gamer. And I was just like, well, don't you notice like all these slow, long shots where they're just walking down a hallway and all these moments that to me are like, this is like traversal in a video game, or like the moment when there's like a truck in front of a tunnel and it's like, oh, how are we going to get around? Like, did that scan as weird to you? Like, to me, those moments felt so video game. And she was just like, well, yeah, so like, I was really impressed by how much video game lexicon has entered into every other form of media, that like an older woman was just like, yeah, I totally recognized those as video game mechanics, but it didn't stop me from enjoying the show and picking up exactly what the plot was putting down. And I just still really enjoyed it as a story and took it as being based on a game, just the same way that I watch a lot of movies based on comic books. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm stupid for assuming you would have some huge problem understanding this.
Well, also, I mean, the three of us have talked a lot about logistics in TV shows, and Game of Thrones really set the tone for like making people want to watch shows about like
logistics.
How people get places and the obstacles they encounter along the way. And this is very much, I mean, it's also in the this show is, and The Last of Us in general is based on Cormac McCarthy and the road, and a lot of just kind of like wandering and obstacles that you face on your various road trips. I mean, the road trip story is kind of the one of the great American fictional tropes. So I wouldn't even say, I mean, I don't know, maybe there are video game tropes in there too, but a lot of that stuff, I think, especially the wandering part, like shots of people traveling, I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, I thought it was surprisingly effective for people who didn't play the game, even though as a person who did, I was distracted the entire time, and Dina was very patient about me being like, okay, so in the video game you're actually playing as Sarah for the entire opening, and it was really interesting at the time because you're like this vulnerable young girl, and then you have to experience getting killed, and then the perspective shifts, and she's like, I'm dating you.
Actually,
she dies in the
that's one of the things.
It was almost shot for shot.
But I remember
what you're talking about, you don't have to do the nerdy voice, because I actually think that's one thing that is missing from the show, not the Sarah part so much as the Ellie part.
Well, the Sarah part is effective. When you're in the backseat of the car and you're like looking around out the windows.
But that's not, no, the point is not what's effective and what isn't. The point is that like, you are missing, because a TV show is switching point of views constantly. When you're with Joel for 10, 15 hours, and then suddenly you switch to Ellie, it has a very significant like impact on the storytelling. Whether or not it's emotionally effective, it just changes things in the same way that the second game changes things when it does its own POV shift. So I think that is one thing that TV shows cannot do, because they're always switching perspectives anyway.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think part of why it's so effective actually is because you play as Sarah at the very beginning, because you're reminded of that moment when you're Sarah, or at least I was, because this was a time period where playing as a female character, especially a young girl, was pretty rare. I mean, 2013, a lot has actually changed in 20 years. So I remember being so excited, 10 years, whatever. I don't know what time is.
I know, none of us do.
The cordyceps happened. It's been 20 years, guys. Bush was president. Anyway, 10 years. So I remember it being a really big deal that you could play as this little girl at the beginning, and then to have that control once again as Ellie later in the game, except she's such a badass in that moment. Like, she can shoot. She has all these abilities. She's also kidnapped in that moment and has to fight off an attacker, just as she does on the show, a pedophile attacker. And I was just really fascinated by those moments and what they say about like control and how Joel sees Ellie and how you, the player, are invited to inhabit Ellie in that moment and see her as kind of a person in those moments. And then to have that control taken away at the end is so much more heartbreaking and effective, because you've had those moments of actually getting to inhabit both Joel's actual bio daughter and his, I would say, just his actual surrogate daughter in those two moments. Like, those are moments that the show can't similarly create. It just, I mean, it can, I guess. People, I'm sure, still cried.
Yeah, player agency and character agency and that whole it's interesting stuff.
So we're moving on to particulars, but I'm curious, just to kind of ground us a little bit. Natty, you don't have to do a like thumbs up or thumbs down, but I am curious your take on this show. Like, because you're kind of dodging around it. I feel like you're critical of it or you don't love it, and that's fine, but I'm curious, like, what is your general take on the show?
I mean, you guys know. I thought The Last of Us was fine when I played it the first time. I wasn't as into it as everybody else. I have a lot of trouble relating to dad stories. I just always have. For whatever reason, it's just a storytelling maneuver that just doesn't get me in the guts in the way that it does for a lot of other people, which, I cry at commercials with kittens in them. So it's not to say I like don't have the ability to sob at things that are designed to prey upon my emotions. But usually, like, the dad is a tough guy and then realizes he has feelings in certain circumstances thing just doesn't always work for me. And there's a lot of that in The Last of Us, the game and the show. But it doesn't mean I don't get intellectually what's effective about it, and I can still enjoy it on that level, even if I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't for me. It's like if you eat a dish that isn't your favorite, but you can still recognize when it's made very well. Let's say it's. I have the auteur's respect for The Last of Us. I have something like that, and I understand what it's trying to do. And also, and I won't spoil it, but I will say that my disappointments about The Last of Us Part 2 have also retroactively made it harder for me to even feel that good about the things I liked about The Last of Us, which I know isn't a problem that everybody else has, but I just had such high hopes for where the story could go, putting you in Ellie's shoes after that ending, that now at least we can all agree that ending is like so charged emotionally, and it's like, on ending. Come on, let's get this like conversation between these two. Like, what is going to happen there?
Well, I mean, okay, we'll get into that because I actually think.
But you know what I'm saying.
No, I know, but like my take at the time, and I think I still have this take, is that they should have just ended it. That ending and the ambiguity of it
that as well. Yeah,
is a perfect ending.
At the time, I kind of wanted them to continue it because I had some ideas in my head of what I wanted to happen. But now I also retroactively, I'm like, they should have just left it there. So
I'm really going to avoid the ending for now. I'm gonna pull us back a little bit. Let's go back to the beginning of the show itself and how it begins, because I think right from the start of the show, it feels very different from the game. It starts with all this world stuff, the news, and episode 2 begins with another flashback to a fungus expert who, sort of tells us how screwed we are.
Scientist character. It's very World War Z, the book, if either of you have read that book.
Oh, I've read that book. I love that book. Oh, I didn't know you'd read that book. Man, I love that book. That's like one of the best apocalypse books.
When you were talking about the Kim Stanley Robinson book, it sounded like very similar to World War Z
they're not dissimilar. They're very different, obviously, in a lot of particular ways, but structurally they're a little bit similar. And they're kind of appealing in that same way where you do get a kind of global view, which this show gives. And I think that is interesting. Like that, it immediately demonstrates something the show can do that the game can't, that, as you said, Jason, also is something that sort of kneecaps. What's the term? That's very violent. It sort of makes it less effective when it moves to entirely Ellie's perspective for a couple episodes in a flashback, which is kind of the closest they can come to making Ellie playable in the later acts. Yeah. Like it's not as effective because they've been shifting perspectives already so much. Where if the show could have done the I don't know if it's Children of Men or whatever. There are TV shows who will do ensemble
steady
cast
cam on a single person,
or they'll do The Leftovers is a good example where The Leftovers season 1 does it's like an ensemble show through and through, and then there's one episode that's entirely about Nora, right? That's her name, Carrie Coon's character. Is that right? Is that her name? Carrie Coon's character, and it's just her. And the whole episode is just her going to this conference in New York. And so by changing formats, it's this striking move, and you're totally shaken up, and then you experience this, you have this whole experience alongside her. Like that's the way a show would do what the game does, where it's like, oh, and now you're playing as Ellie, and it's this big deal. This show doesn't do that because it starts by shifting the perspective immediately. And we'll get into the Bill stuff because that's a huge departure, both structurally and narratively. I think an amazing episode and a big improvement. But even from the beginning, they're doing it.
My personal favorite episode, which I can't believe I'm saying, because heading into the show, I was like, Left Behind is going to be my favorite episode, because Left Behind is my favorite Last of Us piece of content ever. I think it's really well done. But episode,
I think it's my favorite thing Naughty Dog's ever made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can kind of. So that first act, let's get into that, and also the long time, the episode about Bill and Frank and their long relationship. Like all of that is kind of a piece with this change, this sort of structural perspective change. So yeah, I'm curious just what the two of you thought of that from the very beginning, of just how immediately different it felt.
Yeah, so there are a couple of practical practical differences between games and shows that are worth unpacking here a little bit.
Remote control or a control.
Well, actually, that's one of them, legitimately, because
no, I know.
when you have to actually engage in Ellie killing someone and killing David with the machete, the way she does at the end of the show, that feels a lot different as a kind of the audience member in watching this all unfold. It feels a lot different when you are pressing the button and doing it than it does when you are watching with a remote and just kind of sitting there munching on popcorn as it happens in front of you. Not that both can't be harrowing, but one is differently harrowing than the other is.
Yeah,
and the other
agree.
thing is that games, just because of the nature of how they are made, it is a lot more difficult to construct new and unique scenes that won't be shown again, or will have things that won't be shown again, such as that opening section that's like the conference room where they're talking about the fungus, or the
TV set.
The lady, the fungus doctor lady, and all the other kind of unique little moments that in a game a producer would be looking at the schedule and the budget and be like, man, we can't afford to just create this entire thing, which will take us
maybe
months
Naughty
of
Dog.
work.
They're the one of the only studios that or Rockstar. They do that kind of stuff.
Well, even Naughty Dog. Well, even Naughty Dog, they do that, but it's only for specific things, and you can only fit a couple of those per game. In the Last
your
of Us
point totally
case,
stands. Just
you have that prologue section, and they could get away with doing that. So, for example, in the game The Last of Us, it shows you that whole section of Sarah and Joel before the world explodes, and the car sequence and all that stuff, and that is so expensive to make that you really can't do more than one or two of those in a game. And Naughty Dog does do those in pretty much every game. They do one or two of those, usually at the end of a game, where it'll be totally new thing.
Or the giraffe sequence, which is also in the show and is a notable part of the game.
Well, that's not what I'm talking about, because that you model some giraffes and you play around with the cinematics.
What am I saying?
Well, it's not that it's easy. What I'm talking about is specifically constructing an entirely new set that you will never use again in the game. Whereas the giraffes were kind of a part of a section that is using some of the same environments and some of the same post-apocalyptic stuff that you're seeing elsewhere. I'm talking about totally unique set pieces. Anyway, point being that with an HBO show, you can explore a lot more of that stuff and kind of deliberately choose choose to make it feel more ensemble. Like the whole Bill and Frank section is also a good example of that, because it's a whole ass episode that is just like totally unique stuff and these characters that you never are gonna see again in the game, but the show can really take the time and explore that stuff. And I think it's done to good effect in this, because the whole question of like what you're willing to sacrifice, what we're kind of like, I mean, the name of the show is The Last of Us. It kind of implies this kind of connection that you're making with someone when there are only two of you and nobody else is around you, and that's what the whole show is about. And so Bill and Frank is really good at just kind of like telling a microcosm version of that story that's self-contained in a single episode and exploring some of those same themes. So I think it's just done really well in that sense.
Yeah, I thought episode 3, I mean, it's a great example of something that I wish the game had done, but some of that is also times changing. Like the game's version of them as characters was that these two characters were sort of implied to be gay and maybe attracted to each other, but by the time you find them, one of them's already dead, and it's not ever spelled out, and it's pretty unfulfilling, and it's
the relationship had kind of soured too. Like Frank is very angry at Bill, sort of. They never. It seems like they liked each other in a way, but didn't really like each other. Also, it's not a very warm relationship.
Right. And I think there's like a letter from Frank that people really read into at the time. And I'm sympathetic to that. God knows I've read into things.
And Bill is alive in the present day in the game. It's worth noting.
Yeah.
Barely alive, like living for nothing, but alive.
Right. Which is a much more tragic version of his story. Yeah. And I think the rewrite for Ep 3 works a lot better with the larger themes of the show about found family and like the idea of finding somebody in this time where it seems almost impossible to, and to like have that also be a queer relationship is really interesting, because just statistically it's kind of harder to date as a queer person. Like you got to find somebody who's attracted to you on top of finding someone you can stand.
Oh look, hey, there's an attractive gay man in my hole.
I did have that thought where I was like, what are the chances of this?
Bill
but
is
it's
like,
also like, what are the chances of Joel happening upon this young woman who's the same age practically as his dead daughter that he's suddenly forced to take care of? I mean, that's just as coincidental and absurd when you think about it. And so I was kind of willing to go along with it. Plus it's a fictional show, and it's tugging at the heartstrings. So I really liked that as like,
I like to think that there were like 10 others that were just attractive men, but they were straight. And so he just killed them all.
Yeah. He just killed those guys. He was just waiting for one that set off his gaydar, which was like a separate device that Nick Offerman also had.
Yep.
Anyway, I really liked that. And it also just, I mean, aside from just the fact that I thought it was a well-written episode, and I do know there was some criticism from people being like, it sucks that these two gay characters have to die at the end. I don't really feel that way, because this is a show where pretty much everybody dies.
Yeah,
so
I feel like that's a fair assessment.
Just kind of how every episode rolls. And that can be a tough hang. Like, I get it if people are just like, I don't want to watch a show where everybody dies. Like Kirk's partner, for example. I think that's valid. Not everybody has to engage with that. But if you're going to watch a show where everybody is on the brink of death at all times, then having moments where they experience joy and having that be such a key part of why Joel saves Ellie, I think really works. And I think having episode 3 be written in such a way that that sense of joy and like believing in that is part of those characters' arc, it made a plot that I didn't go in liking that much work a lot better for me, because that entire other analog episode was also there, if that makes sense. Like it actually fleshed out the entire rest of the show for me in a way that I completely didn't expect and really applaud.
Yeah, I loved it as well. Part of it, I just have to say, is that Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett was the actor who played Frank, were just incredible. Like again,
so good, perfect chemistry between them.
Great
too.
Great
from
acting
White
on
Lotus,
everybody,
of course.
Yes,
on this show. Yeah, from the White Lotus, and just like, I mean, their scenes together, the scenes where there's just little things when he gives him the plate of food and then he adjusts it a little bit so that it's set just right, which is very Bill. It's Nick Offerman performing this role. It's telling you so much about a character. It's just like the kind of stuff that a great actor like him can do. And then you see it later, like the passage of time. I'm a sucker for any depiction of a relationship over time. Like,
I know.
You know, people who flash back to when they were young or flash forward to when they're old together, like that stuff just wrecks me. And that wrecked me in that episode. I really found it very affecting. And I also liked it because of the change and because it was so clever, which seems like a more shallow reason to like it, but it really wasn't. I cried a few times watching this show. Of course, when Sarah dies, just like the most emotionally brutal thing.
Too.
I cry every time I see it in the game, and it was even worse in the show. And I was just like, God.
Because then you have to watch Pedro Pascal cry.
I know,
like,
and
really
I'm just like, how many times do I have to watch this girl die while her father like sobs? And anyways, so I was like fully crying, just being like, "Fuck you, show."
I love
like,
that you two non-parents are just like just.
Well, you know, if you don't have
everywhere.
kids, you don't care about kids dying.
That's true.
You're not moved by seeing a human being suffering or dying.
Are you going to say you didn't cry, Jason?
Yeah, I don't know. No, I didn't.
That's
cry
really
at this
funny.
one.
Well, I cried at that, but anyways,
things, no.
well, the thing I'm talking about though is this episode 3, and that I was kind of like a much more. I went into it with my heart a lot more hardened because I was like, well, okay, Frank's probably going to die. Then they're going to meet Bill. You know, it'll be like the game. And then my dawning realization of what was going to happen and what was happening when Bill reveals that he has put a deadly amount of, you know, whatever that medicine is into all of the wine. And that, and I thought at first I was like, oh, he's just telling Frank that so that like Frank will just die, but then he's really going to live. But then I was like, oh no, wait, he's really like this. They really are just both going to die together. Cause when he's like, I'm old, man, like we've had a good life. I'm done. I don't want to be without you. I really was moved by that. And then his letter to Joel, which as you pointed out, Maddie, beautifully underlines and emphasizes the ending. I mean, it like sets up the ending so much more strongly
I know.
because of his presence. Hearing that, I was like, I wasn't exactly like crying, being like, it's such good screenwriting, but I kind of was. Like, I was like, fuck, that's really smart. Like, that's a way to take this minor thing and turn it into something that like really ties in with the overall theme. And I wonder what it was like for people who didn't know that's where it was going, because it was so partly affecting for me because I was like, oh God, like this is like the thematic underpinning of the entire ending of this show, which winds
super
up
helpful to know that when you watch.
And if you didn't, you might just think, oh, this is just like, okay, like he, you know, Ellie really matters to him, and not really see what that's setting up and the kind of horrible, in some ways, consequences of that letter.
Yeah, I mean, for Dina, she just was like, that was a great episode. I wish more of the show had those two guys in it. And I was like,
I really like them. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think for her, it's tough because it's like she didn't know what the end of the show was going to be. So it wasn't like me hearing the letter read and being like, oh my God, this is such a clever way to set up the ending, which I didn't want to spoil for her. So it was tough. I'm like, it's almost like it rewards a rewatch, which is kind of neat.
I think that's really it. Yeah, it rewards a rewatch. So can I say, moving out from the Bill and Frank stuff, one other thing about these early episodes that I think was striking to me watching it, imagining kind of watching it for the first time and having never played the game, is just how cool of an idea the cordyceps zombie fungus is. Like, the show actually doesn't have a whole lot of clickers and fungus in it, which is probably fine because like the human stuff is more interesting.
Which is great. And by the way, they've said that there's going to be more in the next season, which is yet another reason.
Whatever. Who knows what that means? Like, but yes. But that notwithstanding, it's such a cool idea. It was a cool idea when the game came out. I remember when I was looking back, I reviewed the game in 2013, and I talked about, there was a Gizmodo post or an IO9 post that a blog, a sort of sister blog to Kotaku, the site that we all wrote for, and it was a tarantula that had been infected by cordyceps, and it's the worst picture, one of the worst pictures I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's like a dead tarantula, bad enough, with like horrible white tendrils coming out of it. Oh man, you're gonna scream.
Controlling its carcass. Making
well,
it
and it's
walk.
just dead, but it like just looks like a coral reef has grown out of this thing. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So, anyways, and just talking about that and being like, what a cool idea! It's not just
idea.
There's Jason is seeing it. It's pretty horrible, right?
Amazing.
It like has antlers or something. Ugh. So, anyways, watching the show and seeing them introduce this idea, And then seeing the way people react to it, there are articles, I saw some article that was like fungus, like people who sell fungus around the world are now having people be like, oh, so what is this, like the thing on The Last of Us? Is this going to take over my brain and kill me? Because now everyone's thinking about fungus. It just was striking to me all over again what a great idea it is for zombies to be this like weird networked fungal growth, and just how gnarly and cool and fun it is.
It's scarier in this because the whole premise is that, like, well, this couldn't happen to humans unless the world was a couple degrees warmer, which is, of course, extremely scary today.
Right.
But that's not, the game doesn't set it up that way.
No, there are some changes to it. There's also the whole idea of the mycelial network, which is a really cool thing I learned about in Michael Pollan's book about psychedelics, but that there is this huge network of fungus, like the whole Pacific Northwest, where I live right now. Like, they're listening to us right now. They're aware that we're talking about them because there is like a crazy like internet of fungus that just connects huge parts of the world. And the idea of the zombies, or whatever you want to call them, the infected, are all connected to one another. So if you kill one, you alert the entire, fungal growth that's going through whatever building you're in, is also cool and different from the game.
And not something they capitalized on nearly enough in the show, in my opinion. They introduced that in episode 2, which then caused Dina to say in like every other episode where there was ever a zombie, she was like, oh, they're going to bring in the others. And then that never happened.
Right, it happened like once.
I mean, this is also what happens if you watch a show with an environmental biologist. So like when we got to the Left Behind episode, she was like, okay, so how does this infected person eat the entire time? Because they've been underground in the mall with like no sunlight, no access to any form of food.
They ate at the food court.
What are they eating? And I was like, listen, I can't talk to you about this.
I'm pretty sure I saw a Subway. There was a Subway.
Went to the Great
in
American
that
Cookie
episode.
Company.
Well, but it's like, what do the infected eat? You just can't think about it. You don't want to think about it. Why is it a bloodborne virus? Why is it spread by biting? Again, better not to consider these questions, but these were things Dina asked me that I had no answer for. And I was like, listen, just enjoy the show.
Right. They make changes. Like they removed the spores so that Pedro Pascal wouldn't have to wear a gas mask all the time, which is also like fair
Which is
enough.
kind of too bad because I feel like the spores make more sense in some ways for a fungus.
Right.
Is it because it's because of Mandalorian?
It's because you are this beautiful guy with this amazing face, like is already wearing a helmet in his other show. And like now we're going to make him wear a gas mask in this one. Just wouldn't be fair to the rest of us who want to look at Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, I know. That's the reason they changed it, but they'll probably bring the gas mask back.
I don't know if it is, but it would make sense. But yeah, I mean, so they made these changes, but then because they really are very faithful to the game, there just aren't that many opportunities for them to be like, well, in this scene, there's kind of just an infected and they have to kill it. Like, it can't trigger a horde because that's not what happens next.
Right.
Even though it's a cool idea.
The one thing missing from the show is like the boss in the game. There's like one, right? Or one.
Well, that thing does turn up in that moment.
It does.
Yeah.
In the scene where Melanie Linsky's character dies.
Right. That's true. But you don't have to fight the boss.
Let's move on to this next act, which takes place after the Bill and Frank chapters, where they go to. Wait, is it Pittsburgh? Are they in Pittsburgh? No, they're not in Pittsburgh.
No,
Pittsburgh in the game.
In the
Kansas
game,
City.
it's Pittsburgh. They changed it to Kansas City.
It's Kansas City
for the show, but it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really make a big difference unless you know Kansas City and watched it and we're like, oh yeah, it's the old Kansas City building.
Right. It was just probably easy logistically.
The Boston sets weren't accurate, so I'm going to assume the Kansas ones weren't either.
Look, a lot changed after the end of the world. There was a bombing.
It suddenly looked a lot like Canada. I don't know why, but everything looked almost a lot like Northern America.
By the way, quick tangent is that I think if people were really living in the United States for 20 years, like that long, I think they would have found a way to clean some of those cars off the roads, clean up at least a couple more things in there.
Nope, gonna be covered in dust.
Well, in Kansas City, I guess it is all apocalyptic
just
rubble.
In general,
the idea in Kansas City is that they rose up against Fedra and killed them all, and there was kind of recently a war there. So maybe it would make sense that they wouldn't have cleaned up.
Yeah, 20 years. 20 years is a long time. 20 years is one of those things where, I really need to clean up the attic. All right, it's been 20 years. Really,
I don't have a lot going on. There's no TV
done.
anymore. I don't have a smartphone. I may as well put that car into neutral and move it.
Exactly.
So there's not a lot. I don't know. These middle chapters are not like the strongest part of the story, I would say.
No, I want to talk about the ending.
I felt like Melanie Linsky was a little bit wasted. I like the idea of her being in more things. It's fun to just have her be this kind of pissed off lady who's killing people. They the whole thing with Sam and Henry.
Yeah.
in the game it's like the strongest relationship that's depicted because Left Behind wasn't in the game originally, and because the Bill and Frank stuff,
and also the Frank and Bill.
Yes, the Bill and Frank stuff also like isn't really established, so you kind of get a little bit of it, but then you really see Henry and Sam. You really get a sense of their relationship. You see what happens when Sam turns. Henry kills him, immediately realizes what he's done, and kills himself. It's really horrifying.
Yeah.
It's a very effective and prestige-y part of the game where Henry shoots himself. It cuts to black immediately. You don't even see it happen. You just hear Joel yell, no. It's really horrifying. It cuts to black, and then it's just like fade up on, they're in a completely different part of the country, and it just says winter, if I'm remembering correctly. Or it's like 2 months later or something.
It's worth noting that that's one of those things that has made this translation so easy, is that the game doesn't really concern itself with a lot of that has a lot of downtime that you never see, never play, has a lot of moments that make for perfect episode endings, because in the game they are perfect episode endings.
Though in the game you're playing as Joel after that cut, and he's still only got 3 bullets in his revolver, and you're like, dude, you couldn't have picked up some bullets in the months in between this?
Some
at some point?
like
the exact same amount of stuff. I was running out of stuff before this. But yes, you're totally right. I think that's true. So yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this. I think that the big set piece at the end was pretty cool, like where all the zombies come out of nowhere. That was an addition. It was a change.
Well, that in the game is extremely memorable, as having to get to that sniper, which is pretty quickly done in the show, but like in the game, exactly, that's one of those things.
To their benefit, there's really just the one stealth sequence against the clicker where they I think they literally throw a brick or something to distract it. And I was like, okay, I can't watch this anymore. And then they don't do that anymore.
See anymore of that.
Where in the game it is very engaging when you're hiding from a sniper. But then having the showdown with Melanie Linsky's group, Kathleen's group, and then the massive uprising of infected with the big beefer dude, whatever those guys are called, coming and like ripping everything apart. That was like pretty cool. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, in the game, that big beefer dude is somewhere else as like a boss
he's like in a gymnasium,
not
right?
important.
Don't you find him in a gymnasium of a school? Yeah, that's a different sequence. But I don't have a ton to say. Do either of you have anything more to say about that section?
No, I'm kind of I'm really eager to talk about the ending, actually.
Okay.
No, not
well,
yet.
We're not quite there yet. So hold your horses, Jason Schreier. We got to talk about Left Behind. We got to talk about Jackson.
Behind.
So after that period, they get to Jackson, which is a new addition because it's like taken from the second game. That is something that you just see more of in the sequel. You really get a sense of Jackson. I'm going to say, and I'll throw to the two of you, that I think the addition of Jackson is cool only because Jackson is a functional, equitable, safe society. And that was a very cool thing in the second game as well. And it's implied in the first game. You get there, you know that Tommy's living there, but you don't really see it. And I think that it really helped this show overall to show, some people are just like making it work. Like they're living together peacefully. Like they would just want to survive and have nice lives. It isn't the thing of The Walking Dead or the thing implied by Kansas City where it's like everyone's a militia who's just like brutally murdering people and they're all like out in their crazy, Mad Max mobiles. Like there are just people who are living normal lives, and I liked seeing that.
Yeah, the only narrative difference is that I guess in Last of Us Part 2, and this is at the very beginning, so it's not a spoiler if you're curious, but I guess it's implied that Joel and Ellie participated in building this into the commune that it was. So I guess that's taken away, but it doesn't really matter.
No, not really. And I did like the idea that there is some tension between Tommy and Joel here that's illustrated more effectively in these scenes, I would say, where it's just spelled out more that Tommy stops talking to Joel and becomes part of this more functional family and also society because he's left that life behind. But also that's a tragic decision for him to make, and it's not necessarily one that guaranteed Joel would come out of the funk he was in and, work on his PTSD and become a more functional person, which one could argue he doesn't actually do in this show or the game.
Well,
but nonetheless, I mean, he finds Tommy and sort of presents himself as healthy enough to like have those conversations and be like, I'm having PTSD episodes, I'm having all these problems. I mean, I just felt like that was a lot more cleverly done in the show. And again, is an example of like this person left, had a new family and figured things out in this world and proves to Joel that it's possible. And like that's kind of established repeatedly.
Yeah, I think that scene, the one you're talking about, Joel saying I'm failing in my sleep when he gives this monologue. It's when he tries to hand Ellie off to Tommy and is like, you take her, like, I'm going to screw this up and I can't lose another daughter. That was like another one of the great changes and an incredible scene. I mean, that was Pedro Pascal.
That's like Pedro at his
knocking
height.
It out. Like that was him being like, this is why you hired me. This is why this, and that was them, all the writers and creators of the show understanding what they had and being like, we have this guy who can do this thing and give you just this view into him as this, really broken, really tragic person. But man, that was a great scene. So agree that I think that sequence is much stronger for having that scene in it and more interesting too.
We made it as far as KC, and then, she saved my life there from another kid. 5 years ago, I would have destroyed him. But she had to shoot him to save me, 14 years old, because I was too slow and too fucking deaf to hear him coming. And that's all. That's all a man kill his own brother. To save her while I just watched. And today I thought that dog was gonna tear her apart because it smelled something on her. And all I did was stand there. I couldn't move. I couldn't think of anything to say. I was so afraid. You think I can still handle things, but I'm not who I was. I'm weak. Lately, there are these moments where the fear comes up out of nowhere, and my heart feels like it stopped. And I have dreams. Every night.
What kind of dreams?
I don't know. I can't remember. I just know that when I wake up, I've lost something. I'm failing in my sleep. It's all I do. It's all I've ever done. It's fail. Again and again.
Yeah, well, so in Last of Us 1, I was just looking this up to remember 100%. The commune is there. They have built the settlement. I guess it's a little bit more.
You're like on a dam, though, right?
Too.
Like you don't really see.
You have to like fix the dam. Yeah, you don't see a lot of the actual visuals of it. You don't see until Last of Us 2. Anyway, not important. What is more important, the big difference that will be explored in future seasons is that in the show, Tommy's wife is pregnant, and that is not the case in the game. So I guess we'll see what happens there with Tommy and Maria and their future child. We'll see what the deal is with that. But other than that, I think pretty straightforward stuff in that section of the show.
Yeah, we haven't brought this up, but like the fact that the show just makes the decision to be significantly more racially diverse is a very welcome change to me, because it's just like nice to see a version of the future, even a post-apocalyptic future where people are living equitably and also brown and black people survived. Like it just, I mean, especially given that we had just experienced like the Henry and Sam storyline, two significant black characters from the game. They were black in the game. They die, notably. That was criticized at the time. And like, it's just nice that the show is like, let's not make those the only black characters here. You know?
Specifically Maria is turned to black in the show and is white in the game. Specifically Maria.
And like Pedro Pascal.
Well, yeah, and also Sarah is.
Yes, and Sarah.
She has darker skin, and it feels like a carry on from The Last of Us Part 2, which was also a much more racially diverse game than The Last of Us Part 1, because it was made many years later, and I think they had changed their approach and were like, let's like make this a more diverse game. So watching the show now, it just feels like a carry on from that, which I agree is very cool to see. Let's keep going. There's like kind of before we get to the ending, we're almost there, Jason. Almost, I promise.
we gotta do some cannibalism.
We gotta talk about David, and we gotta talk about the cannibals. We gotta talk about Left Behind. Both of those sequences are cool. They're kind of interrelated. I don't know. I don't really know how to tackle it. What do you want to talk about first? Left Behind? Cannibals?
I mean, we can talk about Left Behind.
Pedophiles? Stabbing?
I liked Left Behind a lot. I think my only thing about it that I was a little sad about was that there was just the one zombie at the end, because I went back and rewatched this in the game, and the way that Ellie and Riley finally get bit they both get bit and they, stick together, and it's implied that Ellie shoots Riley. And I like that they didn't show that in the show or the game and instead just have you learn it later. I think that's very effective, and I was really relieved that they didn't make us watch it.
Her name was Riley and she was the first to die. Like, that line really matters. It's a good line, and it needs to be telling you something that you didn't see.
Yeah, especially because you already know, and I don't know. Anyway, but I like how in the game, it's these two teen girls who believe themselves to be such badasses that they're willing to go to this location that they know has a lot of zombies in it. And they just don't care because they kind of see themselves as immortal. And like, that's a date night for them. And in the game, that's just kind of their attitude. And then they get overwhelmed. And in those final moments, there's like multiple zombies. Like there's kind of like a chain reaction and a series of moments where Ellie then gets bitten and Riley's fighting off that zombie and Ellie saves Riley from the other zombie that bites her. Like they each get a savior moment with separate interactions. You know what I'm saying? And it's clear that like they're just overwhelmed and they didn't expect this to go so badly. Whereas in the show, there's just one zombie. They think there will be zero, and they are two armed people, but they can't manage to fight it off. And I just found that less believable and a little odd.
Two armed people and trained soldiers.
Yeah,
trained soldiers.
Significantly trained. I thought it kind of lost some of the messaging of the sort of like, we're teens, we're going to live forever. It's all going to be fine. And then suddenly both of them are looking down at bite marks on their arms and they're like, oh, we're dead. We're both dead now. Like that was much more
I hadn't
effective.
realized that because I never played Left Behind, but that's an astute point.
So there's also one of the reasons that I think Left Behind is one of the best things Naughty Dog has ever made. There are interactive sequences in Left Behind that are just, they can only be done in a game and are really incredible. There's this fighting game sequence in particular that's just absolutely beautiful that recurs in The Last of Us Part 2 in a different context, but in the sort of spaceship sequence. But it's the same idea where like you just watch Ellie as she plays. Well, they want to play, is it a Savage Starlight game or is it, I mean, it's what's Mortal Kombat. In the show, they find Mortal Kombat 2 and they just play it, where if I'm remembering correctly in the game, they go to play it and then the power cuts or the thing stops working. So then Riley describes to Ellie what the game is like, and then it just sits on Ellie's face and she's playing and Riley's like, oh, like you're, he's coming at you, like you gotta fight him, and Ellie's like, first she's kind of like, this is stupid, and then she starts getting into it, and then like you see the lights of the screen like start reflecting on her face. It's like really wonderful. It's like really intimate between the two of them. It's just like really incredible thing that you're kind of interacting with, like you're playing it in the game. And of course it's also about someone playing a video game. So there is some stuff like that just is really special in the game version of this that wasn't in the show version. I don't know how they could have done it. I was hoping there'd be some kind of a nod to it just because it's like a really special moment in that game. I still think about it and remember it, but it's okay for the game to have some things that are just for the game too, I guess.
Sure.
I did like that they kept a lot of similar lines, like the one about them both going crazy together. I just remembered for some reason, and then
it's a memorable line. It's a good line.
Yeah, I don't know. There were things like that I really appreciated them keeping, and largely really dug that episode. But yeah, we can move on to the cannibalism.
Yeah, we can move on. And yeah, there really are a lot of those shot for shot sequences that are generally pretty strong and underline how unusually strong like a lot of the writing and just the sort of conversational pacing of the original game was. So yeah, now we get to David and the cannibals.
Good old David, man! What a performance by that guy.
What's his name? I'm gonna remember.
Scott Shepherd. Oh, his name is Shepherd. Perfect.
Yeah, what a creep. Good Lord. So my take on this sequence was that I think it actually is the one part of the show that I think they could have had a little bit more time with. Like, I think that maybe this arc would have worked better over a couple of episodes. It's the only time I feel that, and I'm not totally sure it would have worked. Maybe it wouldn't have. I generally really appreciate how the show is just like all killer, no filler. Like, we are not wasting time with like bandit outposts. We're not wasting time with bullshit. It's like people die fast. They come on, they do their thing, they die. They keep moving. Like the story goes through. We got 9 episodes. We're going to tell this whole story.
No time for collectibles. No time for
We got a
finding
hospital
secrets.
to get to, people. We got a cure to get to.
In this one case, I think that I just wanted a little more time with him before the turn. There's this moment halfway through the episode where he's talking to the girl in the like dining hall, and he gets up and he hits her, and you're like, whoa, okay, like, so this dude is like fully bad. Oh my God. Like, because up until then he's sinister, but he's kind of like, it's a little ambiguous, and then the mask is off, and you're like, okay, and then he's like a fucking cannibal pedophile, and like he's like the worst ever.
You really have to be both a cannibal and a pedophile.
Yeah,
you
it
can't
seems
just
a
pick
little
one.
much.
Agree
No?
that I think maybe we all agree, just based on the way we're talking about it, that I think the pedophile stuff is like a bridge too. It's too much, like too much mustard on the sandwich or whatever.
Though. It was one of the things that I was like, I wouldn't be mad if they changed this, but
it's more subtle in the game, if I'm remembering correctly.
It's like, why not just want to eat her? Maybe if he just wanted to cook her and just serve her
or
up.
even like, get her to join him and like be
like
a weird daughter to him.
Maybe if he just wanted a child bride, but he also wants to eat his child bride. It just seems a little
or if it was
much.
just pedophilia, not cannibalism.
Guys, this is perfect because Passover starts next week, and on Passover there's a Jewish song called Dayenu. Translation is "It would have been enough."
It would have been
and
enough.
The song,
I remember this from Alan Sepinwall's TV recaps.
The song is about how like, if you had rescued us from the desert, from the Egyptians, but not saved us from the desert, would have been enough. If you had saved us from the desert, but not given us this food to eat, it would have been enough.
Yep.
That is essentially what we're talking about here, David.
Yes.
If they had been cannibals, that would have been enough.
Yeah.
Dayenu, David.
I kind of do think that though. Like, I feel like also in the game, the pedophile aspect was like not noticed by many people. Like,
it was very subtle, if I recall.
It was very subtle.
Just he touches
like,
her hand, and it's
But there's also like a line he says, something I don't remember exactly, but there's like a couple moments where you're like, oh, like he's also like attracted to Ellie. That's gross, and like you can kind of pick up on it if you're paying attention. And so then
and here it's spelled out a lot more.
Yeah, and like also in the game, I mean, you're playing as her. You feel a lot more vulnerable. You have to fight him off as an attacker, and like to have him also be a pedophile subtly indicated is like, it makes the moment much scarier. I didn't love it in the game. I thought it was a little much at the time, and in the show I at least was prepared for it, and I was like, well, here we go, this is gonna be what this
it's the whole thing. Apologies for recapping this, but the thing at the end when they're fighting and he's like, I like it when they fight or whatever, I was just like, holy shit. I was like, okay, like I already hate
like
this guy.
Disney
Like
villain levels. It like became funny at that point. I was like, this is corny. I don't know.
So that notwithstanding, though, so I think my pacing thing is that I wanted a little longer with him in friend mode, because those sequences, the sequence where she has the rifle, you know what I mean? He's in friend mode. He's like, hey, like, we're cool. You like, I'm going to give you pills. I'm going to help you out. Right, he is with his cult, and of course Troy Baker there. I liked seeing him.
Funny.
It was funny, and I was like, oh, this is fun because Troy. I was thinking he was going to get killed by Pedro Pascal, but even better to have him get killed by Bella Ramsey, like having the guy who played Joel get killed by Joel. But anyways, during those sequences, it's very tense. You really feel Ellie's vulnerability when she has the rifle, and because she's not as much of a killer as she is in the game, you just are like, man, like this could go so bad. Like I was so tense during those sequences, and I really liked that tension. And then I wanted a little more time in that zone, and felt like it could have stretched out a little bit more. And just generally, you know, when it becomes like, oh my God, we're cannibals, like, I don't know, like it's I guess it's like the most tawdry and kind of pulpy plot twist that the show takes, or it felt the most like The Walking Dead. Like it was the most like kind of like, oh man, we're eating meat, but what kind of meat is it? Gross, look at that meat. And you know, I mean, I don't know. I didn't hate all of that. Like just mostly thought the pacing was a little off. And I could have done without some of the pedophilia stuff.
I just feel like it could have had a lighter touch, especially given how many great changes have been made across the other episodes.
That's a good way of putting it.
Felt like this needed another pass, but it's not.
Right, a slightly lighter touch. Which this was, I believe, a Craig Mazin written episode, and he's generally had a lighter touch. I was kind of surprised that it dialed it up there at the end so much. But you know, still strong. They end with him calling her baby girl. The camera pulls in on the watch. The whole thing, like, you know, you really see it. I remember playing the game, I think for the first time, or maybe I was replaying the first chapters, when Joel is watching her go with Tess, and he like, Tess moves on, and then Joel stands there for a second, and he looks down at his watch and then keeps walking. And just being like, wow, like body language and subtle storytelling in a video game. Like it was a very striking thing at the time to just sort of underline how even at the time the game felt like a prestige TV show. Okay, so anyways, let's get to the end. Let's get into it.
Well, so wait, let's talk first about Ellie's mom and her death scene, because this, okay, I was kind of blown away by this edition, and I will say I liked it, because something that always bugged me about the game, and especially The Cure, was that I was like, I don't understand how this works. How does Ellie's immunity work? They actually come up with an explanation for it that I think is pretty logical. And it's a good enough explanation to justify why Ellie would have to die, which always was why in 2013 I was like, this is ridiculous. Why do they have to take her brain out? But in this, they really go into it. They're like, no, this is how this works.
I've definitely seen like scientists or whatever, like virologists being like, you definitely never would have to kill someone to get this. But like, if you believe that,
they
yes.
do their best. I mean, they really try to come up with it and make it work insofar as like, okay, so Ellie's mom, they show Ellie still in the womb, but like her mom, who I don't think you have her listed here, but isn't her mom?
What's Ashley Johnson?
She's played by the person who plays Ellie in the game.
Yeah, Ashley Johnson, who plays Ellie, who sounds like Ellie. Like when she starts talking, it's like, oh man, it's Ellie. Yeah, she's Anna Williams is her name.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense for her to be Ellie's mom. So right after Ellie emerges from the womb, umbilical cord still attached, her mom gets bit. You're like, oh, how is this going to go? But we already know Ellie makes it. So we're like, oh, does she just get like a little bit of the zombie juice through the umbilical cord? How does that work? And that's enough, at least for me, my suspension of disbelief, to be like, okay, sure, it's part of her brainstem. It isn't somehow controlling her, but there's some tiny enough dose that she got that it kind of vaccinated her, immunized her against this. I can go along with that in ways that the game didn't quite sell me. Like that ending, there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work for me. We're about to get to it. But this, I thought, helped set it up by being like, this is why Ellie's so different from every other person. She had this extremely bizarre thing happen when she was a little baby. You know?
Yeah, I really liked that scene. It was, like you said, it was very fun to see Ashley Johnson, who I've mostly seen acting, not voice acting, like being in something. She's in the first Avengers movie. She's the waitress that like Captain America has a couple conversations with during the Battle of New York. So I already knew what she looked like. And she does, I guess, look like Ellie as well from the games. But it was very fun seeing her getting to play Ellie's mom. I'm actually like I don't know that I needed the explanation though. It changes it. They both work. The way that the game did it was much more of a just it turned it into more of an abstraction. It was just, well, she can do it and we don't know why. Like she is immune and we don't know why. And they kind of just, it was like, well, we're not going to explain why. And at the time I kind of appreciated it only because video games tend so often in the opposite direction to like over explain things. You'd be like, well, the reason is that like the cells in this, it has this like special like antibody that if we synthesize the antibody, it's the midichlorians thing, where having that completely absent was kind of cool. In this case, I guess explaining it is fine, but then it raises like more questions that I don't need to be raising. Like, okay, so then I guess should we be having pregnant women be getting bit by the zombies? Like, is there an ethical case for that? Well, no, probably not. So then it starts it gets even more kind of into the realm of.
But isn't that kind of what the finale is designed to do? Is this exact set of conversations?
Well, no, but the idea is you could create it. You could recreate it in the mythos of the show because of that, right? So now
now that we know how it's made. But it's also that it begins raising particular questions, and I actually think that the ending works best on a raw, emotional, out of focus level. And when you get more focused about it, I guess we can discuss, but you start to look at the particulars of what's going on. And then the more into the particulars you are, the more it feels like, oh, well, this isn't actually the profound ethical conundrum that it appears to be. Because, things like, we don't know if it's going to work. Yeah. Ellie was not asked for her consent explicitly. She was just put under and they're going to kill her.
Personally.
Right. So then you're looking at it and Joel is just here in totally wakes up out of nowhere and then is told that this is the situation. Well, yeah, it becomes a lot more understandable, even leaving aside the trolley problem ethical question.
Because Marlene and co have behaved unethically up to that point that Joel wakes up, where they already haven't communicated with Joel, Ellie, or any other people about what's really the plan, which is also sad because you get the sense Ellie would have been on board for it. And also if Joel had been told all along, he might have acted differently, but we don't know.
Right, so it kind of boils down to a communication issue. But just to close out the thing with her mom, by introducing that as well, it just adds another one of those kinds of specific wrinkles where you're like, well, then also, why do we have to kill her if maybe there's some other way that we could get more immune people and like keep studying this, or like, we don't even know how it was made. So it's like complicating that question actually doesn't necessarily.
Anyway. But I want to hear
right.
what Jason thinks.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
Well, first of all, it's interesting. The show spends a lot more time focusing on Fedra as fascist than the game does. The game doesn't really do that much. And it's interesting that it does that and then presents the Fireflies as the anti-fascist group, but also makes them dicks and terrorists and awful people who act in super unethical ways.
Also, yeah.
It's very much like the show is like, hey, let's do what BioShock Infinite did in 2013 and follow that, right? No, but yeah, I think that the ending is like incredibly well done and still hits just as hard today as it did back then, as is obvious by lots of people discussing it and debating it. And I don't actually think it's that interesting to debate, well, did Joel do the right thing, so much as like trying to understand why he did what he did and why it makes so much sense. Yeah. And I think to your point, Maddie, I think the fact that they acted so unethically is interesting. I think the fact that they stripped Ellie of her agency and didn't give her any choice in the matter, and then Joel did the same, is another kind of interesting theme here. But I think what is most at least what resonates most to me and makes me empathize the most with his decision to just become a mass murderer and kill everybody in a hospital is that, like, for the second time in his life, people are trying to take away his daughter without giving him a chance to say goodbye, without giving him any sort of closure or catharsis in the matter. And I think that is really what just kind of sets him off. And that is what's most interesting to see is, like, first his daughter is taken away from him and, like, she just goes and he doesn't get to say anything.
And it's also a misunderstanding, similarly.
Well, but the point being that
it's not
like,
zombies. It's also
right.
people in power not listening to him.
But it's not even, it's just like that he is not able to like communicate with her in the final moments and like say what he wants to say goodbye in any sort of way. And I think that, like, if the Fireflies had handled it ethically and said, look, here's what's going to happen, let's have a conversation about it, it might have been a very different outcome.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect of Pedro Pascal's performance during that final massacre in which the show finally just fully becomes a video game and he's like upgrading his weapons and reloading, and he looks...
Well, that whole scene, I mean, that's straight out of the game, like shot for shot, too.
Right, and he looks dead inside. His eyes are just empty, and it's it's like really chilling, like when he's just killing unarmed people and just sort of, he's completely shut off. He's in this other sort of, you can imagine some sort of emotional fugue state.
Yeah, I mean, he's in like a PTSD dissociative state is how I would present it, yeah.
And it's how he presents it in his performance. I haven't seen whether he talks about that specifically, but it comes across very clearly. And he is making this decision that is tragic on so many levels. The ones that hit the hardest, for me at least, are the ones that go outside of the trolley car, or the trolley problem of like, are you condemning the world, and into the specific tragedy of, like you said, Jason, removing Ellie's agency again and and ruining their relationship in a way that, well, we'll get into the sequel in a second, but like in a way that certainly plays out and that is clearly going to play out just through that final conversation that they have. And while all those questions are interesting, they're interesting on like an emotional level, a philosophical level, an ethical level, like they're interesting on practical level, all these different levels. What it all comes down to is that final sequence. And this is where I think Bella Ramsey just crushes it. I mean, she was great throughout this whole show, but the final scene, Ellie has to do that. And it was remarkable in the game. It's the exact same in the show. It's shot for shot. I mean, pacing everything about that final conversation. The way that he's like too friendly, the way he's openly talking about Sarah and comparing them.
The story doesn't add up. Like, she's asking him questions and he doesn't, he suddenly is like, oh, well, there were raiders. Like, she can tell he's lying.
Yeah, in the car, it's clear it was a lie. But then when they're walking and he's like being so friendly and open in a way he never was. And then just that final interaction, the way that she asks him, for real, tell me the truth. He straight up lies. She can tell. You can see it on her face. She decides to accept it. And then it just cuts to black. Like, that is an amazing ending. Like, it's an amazing ending for a TV show. It's an amazing ending for a game. I kind of stand by the thing I felt when I first saw it in the game, that like for something to just end that way and then walk away, like quit the field and leave it, would have been really cool. Even though, of course, I understand why they felt the need to explore the ramifications of all of that. It would have been kind of, it's neat that at least people who watch the show currently just get to live in the ambiguity of that moment for a while and just like and just feel it.
I'm envious of them.
Well, I mean, I'm sure some of them will look up like Last of Us Part 2. I wonder what happens. But yeah.
So all right, so we're going long. I know there's like so much more to talk about, but let's talk some.
Is there a second game? What second game?
Let's talk a little bit about, since we have gone long, so we just have a few minutes here. But let's this will be spoilers after this for The Last of Us Part 2. So if you haven't played that game and you don't want to know what happens, this is all we're really going to talk about from here on out. But thanks for being a member and listening to the show. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about The Last of Us Part 2 and how this might translate, because what I'm interested in is the same thing that was true of the TV show, which is that they could change things. They could streamline things. They could, I would be surprised, for example, I think one thing that strikes me anyways when I play this game, which I will say, as much as when we talk about The Last of Us Part 2, usually, like Jason, you will sometimes say, oh, well, all three of us don't really like that game. I gotta say, like, I really admire a lot of things about The Last of Us Part 2. I have very mixed and ambivalent feelings about it. Like, there are things I think are incredible. I think its narrative ambitions are remarkable. But when I go back and, I mean, of course, its game design is like out of control. But when I go back and I play it, I am struck by the darkness and by the feeling that like so many people spend so much time creating a story this bleak and violent and nihilistic in a lot of ways. And in the end, that just eventually kind of wears me down. What I would think that might happen with the show, just because Bella Ramsey as an actress, her energy on screen, though being the same age as Ellie is supposed to be in The Last of Us Part 2, reads as younger, just has a different energy. I could see them making a version of The Last of Us Part 2 where a lot of the big plot developments happen. Certainly, Joel will have to die very early. She'll go on the same quest for revenge. But I could just see it playing differently because of the actor that they're working with. Like, I could see them kind of just making the story feel a little bit differently, just in terms of the sort of overall energy of it. Do either of you see that at all?
I mean, I have the same problem with the scene that I know Jason is thinking of, which is the extent of the closure that they give Ellie and Joel in the game. Like, they gotta take some of it away, because otherwise her motivations just don't make any sense. And I feel like the show has the opportunity to do that rewrite, and I really hope they do. There's some other kind of gentler rewrites I would also hope that they did, but that's a big one. I feel like the fact that Ellie doesn't ever have the chance to come out to Joel, like they show scenes in The Last of Us Part 2 where he's assuming that she's dating Jesse, who's Dina's boyfriend at the time, and she clearly is like too shy to tell him. That's a sort of hanging thread that in playing it, I always assumed that would be one of the things that she's so upset about, missing the opportunity to do. But no, that's resolved. He tells her he loves her and supports her. Like, it's like there's so many things that it's like, it's supposed to be a uniting of the themes that Jason was bringing up earlier in this episode, where it's like he never really gets the chance to say goodbye to Sarah. Her life is cut off so tragically short, and he doesn't want that to happen to Ellie, and he wants her to be able to live a full, long life that Sarah didn't get to have, and like that's what he's trying to preserve. And like, to then have Joel die having experienced what appears to be a full, long life that's like pretty great in the last 10 years is like... Okay, so why are we so mad then? Like, it's so weird. And then while I'm still talking, let me just say, I've always thought it was like ridiculously, ludicrously corny that the surgeon who operated on Ellie and died also has a daughter who's like the same age as Ellie, and she's also mad that her dad died, and that like, I don't know, that's just really goofy to me. Like, speaking of coincidences, like, how many daughters are there gonna be? You know what I'm saying? Like,
so what they're gonna do is, I don't know if you caught this or saw this, that Laura Bailey is one of the nurses in the. This is the actor who played. What's her
Abby.
name? The daughter, Abby, is in that room. So maybe it's just going to be the nurse She becomes like death nurse and goes on revenge.
It's just silly. I don't know. I thought it was silly in the game. I was like, is this young woman going to turn out to be the daughter of the doctor? And then she is. It felt so neat, but like not in an interesting way.
Yeah. And to really quickly explain the thing you're talking about, just because I think that's a really good point and a change they could make for people who don't remember, that one of our biggest complaints, I think all three of us had the same complaint structurally with the story, is the fact that throughout the story, Ellie is presented as anguished over not having closure with Joel and having left furious with him after finding out what he did. And then it's revealed at the end in a final cutscene that actually they fully got closure. They talked it out. It was great. They were going to be great. And so none of her past actions don't make the same kind of sense they seem to throughout the story. Just by removing that, you suddenly like get a stronger story. Yeah,
like make that a dream. Make that a wish she had.
Just to explain that to people who don't remember what happened specifically. Go ahead, Jason.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. You were gonna just.
You don't have any other thoughts. You just did. I say them all for you because I know we agree on.
No,
this.
That's 100% what I agree with. Is that that final section just kind of like makes the whole game just seem like a waste of time. It's also very long. I mean, they have the chance with this HBO show to cut down a lot of the.
Because
they've said they're
going to
do 2 seasons.
No, well, I mean, cut down a lot of the like endless gunning down camps, and
or they could have a whole episode where Abby is in the basement of a hospital and she fights a gigantic rat king.
Right? I'm sure there will be a rat king, but I mean, one of the reasons it feels so long is because there's so many sequences of just like sneaking around and shooting people, and especially towards the end of The Last of Us Part 2.
There's 2 separate moments where Ellie and Abby confront each other and you think they're going to slug it out to the death. Like that happens, but then the game doesn't end and there's 10 more hours.
And they go to San Diego to do it again.
It ends with that. And it's like, why? What? Don't. Oh, Last of Us Part 2. Why did you hurt us? Why'd you do it?
Yeah, it's rough. It's a rough hang, but
they can fix it.
Yeah, I don't know. The performance of Bella Ramsey, I think, can carry. I mean, her energy, yes, but also just like her screen presence and just it's captivating watching her. So I think she could potentially carry it, even if it repeats some of the mistakes of the game.
Mm-hmm. And I also feel like there's opportunities in flashbacks for like Pedro Pascal to be more withholding and like to make it more clear that like their relationship wasn't good when he dies, and to feel like there was something unresolved between them and that can now never be fixed. And I don't know. I mean, I actually always thought Abby's storyline was the stronger of the two, so I don't really have many notes there. I feel like that's just a matter of them casting somebody pretty good as Abby, and I guess also Lev, I think, is the name of the boy that she hangs with. So yeah, I'm curious who they're going to cast and how it's going to go. But I'm also not excited to watch it, so we'll see.
Yeah, I am. I fully am.
I'm curious.
I am.
So that'll get the better of me.
Curious.
Man, people should listen, because we can't go too much longer, but people should listen to our Beanscast on The Last of Us Part 2 if they want to hear our thoughts on that game and potentially extrapolate what season 2 and 3 and so on could look like of the show. But one thing that I hope they find a way to address in a smart way is the question we all had of like, hey, this is kind of this major territory fight over the city between these two big factions, and it's just like this endless cycle of bloodshed, but like there's no reason either of them have to stay in Seattle because there's an entire country full of abandoned cities and places, and like you can set up shop anywhere. And The Last of Us,
there aren't that many of us, is what I keep hearing.
No,
there's
and
cars
it's supposed to be
not too many of us.
It's supposed to be this big allegory for Israel and Palestine, but like it doesn't work because that is very specifically a place where there's nowhere else to go, and there's all this kind of ancestral ties to this piece of land. Whereas in Seattle, it's just like, oh yeah, we could just go down the street. We could go to Portland and just hang out there.
You just go somewhere else.
not to just totally rehash our complaints about The Last of Us Part 2, but it will be interesting to see how they handle that, because again, something that they could maybe make some changes to.
Yeah, I just hope it's something, because they
Both
could
of them
address
are going to be really into coffee, and they're just going to be like, Seattle's
like,
best,
look.
Starbucks, these are the factions.
It's like the Starbucks like mother load of coffee beans that are already roasted, and they're like, look, we're just going to sit on this.
Fight for these.
Yeah.
We need them every morning. All right, well, this is a lot of fun to talk about. We live in a world that is gaga for The Last of Us. Somehow that happened, and here we are.
Pretty wild.
It is pretty wild. Video games, they're not just for kids. So anyways, this was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for being Maximum Fun members. Happy Max Fun Drive if you're listening to this the day that it came out. We really appreciate you joining up.
If you're a brand new member, enjoy the archives. And thank you so much.
There's a lot of Beanscast back there, including one on The Last of Us Part 2, as we alluded to. But yeah, that's it. We've gone long. Thanks so much for listening. And Maddie and Jason, I will see you both next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddie Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you're listening to this bonus episode, it means you're already a member, so thank you. We really appreciate your support. Find us on Twitter at TripleClickPod, send email to tripleclick@MaximumFun.org, and find a link to our Discord in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
MaximumFun.org.
Comedy and culture.
Artist owned, audience supported.